Thank you. Well, my name is Lee, and I'm a geek, and I'm a CEO of a company in the neurotechnology field. And what you hear about those words, neurotechnology, today is what people heard about 1992 about a thing called the internet. I spoke just 3 days ago in San Francisco at a world conference on neurotechnology, and it is and will be the fastest growing and the most profound change in each of your life that you can imagine. So, did I get your attention? Well, if I didn't, maybe Michelangelo did. If I had a pointer, I would show you this, but I don't. But you can see the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe and the brain stem that God is encoused in for the creation account on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Here, Michelangelo knew that everything we do, think, say, and experience is really based on our brain, that 3-pound mass we hold between our ears. I've written a book about that and the stories around it called Limitless You, The Infinite Possibilities of a Balanced Brain. And today we license software to help people do just that because, in fact, there's one simple question you can ask yourself, and that simple question is, do I sleep really well at night? Do I wake rested? And am I refreshed in the morning when I wake? And if your answer is no, I can guarantee you that you cannot be optimized. There is no possible way. So sleep is a profound thing, and that happens with and of the brain. And we just completed a clinical trial at Wake Forest University School of Medicine, and they were profound in proving that that's true, that when you synchronize the brain, then sleep happens restfully, and they were successful about 100% for the test subjects. First time in history. So we have and licensed our technology. We license it to doctors and scientists, and we license it to psychologists. We license it to different kinds of therapy groups. And that technology now is in 200 offices in 19 countries. We have 50,000 clients. We're adding about 500 new clients a week. And our corporate offices in Scottsdale, Arizona, a perfect place to come and visit in December, January, February. And what we see is our brain patterns. And brain patterns matter. There's a left side of our brain, there's a right side of our brain, and they have to talk to each other because if you're a geek-like person, you know that parallel processors have to be in sync, and so does our brain. The importance of that being in sync is that when the baseball bat hit my head initially, my brain took action to keep me alive because of that baseball bat. When people have tremendous stress in their lives, when they have bankruptcies, when they have breakups, their brain takes an action to keep them alive. Oh, and you think you've got the answer to that action? Let me tell you, the best possible person in this room or on this planet that's going to have an intent and a motivation, that's going to take you 500 milliseconds if you're really, really good. And for most people, it's going to take a second. But your brain is going to respond in 50 milliseconds, 10 times faster minimally. That means that your brain's going to have an action before you even recognize what it does. That means when you get angry about something and you don't recognize what you got angry about, it wasn't you. It was your brain, so now you got an excuse. That's a joke. Two sides of the brain, parasympathetic and sympathetic. And the brain responds according to what it needs to respond to keep us alive. The parasympathetic side is the stop side, and the sympathetic side is the go side. The parasympathetic side is the freeze side. An explosion happens behind me right now, and I duck and cover automatically. That's my parasympathetic brain taking an action. If I'm attacked, if I'm verbally or physically attacked, my sympathetic side, my fight or flight side are going to take an action, and so will yours. And it will happen in 50 milliseconds because that's how fast that 3-pound mass is that you hold between your ears. That has more connections than there are cubic meters known in the universe. That's how impossibly strong your brain is. If we can only find ways to move it further and faster, like we are finding with athletes, like we are finding with military, we can have things that we've never thought possible. And that whole field is in neurotechnology. On Tuesday, I saw where they implanted small video cameras. They mapped the pixels of those video cameras to the occipital lobes of their brain, and the blind could see. I saw totally paralyzed people who had a thought about moving their hand that could have a wrap around their arm that could totally eliminate their spine, and their hand could move, open and close. Neurotechnology, it's happening, and it is the field of the future. And it's all about this little 3-pound mass that we all have between our ears. So if we're more likely and more prone to be in a freeze state or a parasympathetic state, we're more likely to see this kind of thing: depression, weight gain, dizziness and lightheadedness, low blood pressure, low heart rate, fatigue, diarrhea, and so on. If we're more likely to be in a sympathetic side, where we see hypertension and anxiety and panic attacks and hypervigilance and poor sleep and emotional aggression. That brain is a wonderful thing, and it drives you. You don't have control of it like you think you do, but when you balance it, then you have so much more control than you do if you don't balance it. And a perfect way of knowing if you balance it or not, if your brain is reasonably balanced, is to ask yourself how you sleep. How do you wake in the morning? Now, the importance of a brainwave balance. I'm going to show you a video just in a second of an all-American kid, 17 years old, loved in his family, loved at school, loved by his teachers, loved in church, top-notch academic career at 17, top-notch athlete in the valley. And in 1 second of time, all of that changed. Here's the video. That was a graph, that was a spectrograph of this young man's brain in the morning, the first day he started. On the left side of that, the bottom of the spectrograph, the colors represent the different frequencies. The lowest red is the lowest frequency, and the highest purple is the highest frequency that we're looking at. On the left side is the left side of the brain, and the right side is the right side of the brain. Now, what you see is a strong asymmetry in low frequencies on the left side. That's where he was hit. That's where you saw the blow happen. It happened on the left temporal lobe, basically, of that individual. Now, you see on the top right side, that is dominant over the top left, and you see that dominance because he's in a fight or flight mode. This All-American kid turns into anything but an All-American kid in one blow, 1 second of time. In one day, he turns back to an All-American kid because his brain had the opportunity to see itself. Now, most medical science, no, that's not true. All medical science to date is based on changing chemistry in our body and or our brain, and that chemistry, the effective change, is used to try to help us rid ourselves of a discomfort or pathology that we're facing. 3% after 6 weeks. 3%. 3%. Whoops, did I shut that off? You got to be smarter than the machine in order to use it, I guess. 3% after 6 weeks of those medications are effective. 15% of those medications have a negative effect. 5 times more likely after 6 weeks of medication use to be harmful than helpful. And that's what we use in all of the world. And this is going to change it. And this is changing it. A piece at a time, a person at a time. And here's how it's done. The first step in the process is to find out where the imbalances are in the functional brain pattern. That's done by what you saw. Sensors are placed on the scalp, and those sensors read the brain patterns, and then when they do, they get back to a place where we can run the session. And what the session does is pick up the optimal frequency in a brain, send it to a computer. The computer changes that back to a musical note and plays it back to the person. And that's as easy as basically it gets. So we do the assessment, we find out where the imbalances are, we run the sessions, and then we hope that the brain will auto-calibrate. And for over 90% of people, that will happen successfully. 90%. So the stories that you've heard about how much power you have in what you are to do what you do are tremendously true. And not only that, we can see it and we can measure it. We can see and we can measure the capacity for love, and we can see and we can measure the capacity for fear. That's a big deal. We can see and we can measure how much somebody can focus, how well somebody can sleep, how likely they are to be angry, how much they are compromised in terms of their cardiovascular system. We can see and we can measure that. That seeing and that measurement is very, very important in the field of neurotechnology for you and for me and for the future. However, it's not as important as the fact that we can change it in a way that's completely non-invasive to you or to the human being on the planet. We're going to change the planet. We are changing it, a person at a time. And we're changing all of these things. The way they're looked at, the way they're thought about, the way they're going to be treated, quote unquote, this is all changing. So we're going to talk about that this afternoon. We also have a table outside. You can pick up some information on it. Understanding, of course, that you can measure yourself very simply by seeing how well you sleep. It's a very simple measurement because approximately 50% of the American population for at least 2 weeks a month has very compromised sleep. So the sleep disruption process, it's reported that many Americans have a shorter amount of time to sleep, You know that. You have more stress, you have more things to do, and that sleep compromise process for, especially in this country, is something that's cutting our productivity dramatically because you cannot be optimized when you don't sleep well. So when you look at insomnia and medical problems, there's a direct correlation. When you look at sleep deficits and weight gain, there's a direct correlation. You can have exercise, you can have diet changes, and that does help mitigate problems in weight gain, but if you don't sleep, they won't work, and they won't work consistently for the long term. Amazing. That's proven. So when we're looking at various things in the field of well-being and the field, and your field, whatever that is, of being optimized in that field, sleep is the essence of it. Sleep well and enjoy it immensely because it's greatly important. Thanks for your time. Hope to see you this afternoon. We'll try to hook somebody up.